Good morning and welcome to my channel. I'm Little Misdiagnosed, but you can call me Maria. I'm a mom, a professor, a counselor, but most important, I am misdiagnosed. Welcome back to my channel for those who have been here before, and to those who are new, welcome to you. Wow, it's going to be a morning. This morning, I'm once again sharing stories from community members who've taken the time to fill out my Google form and share their own stories of difficulty, hardship, misdiagnosis, and especially gaslighting. Welcome to the gaslighting thread. I need to come up with a name for it. I almost want to joke that I'm not gaslighting, you are. What do you mean I'm gaslighting you? I told you that before. Okay, we got to come up with a name. Today, I'm reading Taya's story, and I'd like to put a content warning. There's nothing particularly unsettling here. However, for those who are more sensitive to content that they're listening around kids or themselves have had some negative experiences, I'm going to put a content warning for a bit of medical information about blood, menstruation, pain, how children are treated by doctors, etc. If this isn't the video for you, then please take care of yourself first. Teya begins. After a brutal first period at 11 years old, which ended up pouring down my legs and into my shoes, I was put on birth control pills. My family doctor at the time reassessed my case 6 months later. Oh, Teya. So many of us who have chronic illnesses, autoimmune, different ways that we grew, different ways that we are, many of us actually experience symptoms that go together. As a certified fertility awareness counselor, I'm amazed by the number of people who have physical concerns with their period, but also have like early age of menses, have dysmenorrhea, a lot of pain, that kind of thing. This isn't surprising to me. And the fact that really GPs in most areas only know to put kids on birth control pills, which at 11 years old, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with birth controls in and of themselves, but alone as the only treatment, as the only decision, just trying. GPs in North America are trained to figure out if someone is having an acute issue and then deal with chronic concerns with medication. That's their scope of practice. There's nothing wrong with it, but they do not have the time and the energy, and sometimes the training, to tell you what else is out there to make specializations. Their job is not to send you to a specialist first off, and those of us who have chronic illnesses often go around and around and around in this circle of time. At the age of 11, 6 months is a very long time. Teya continues. He discovered if we took me off of the birth control, I would pour blood without stopping and have severe cramping. I was left on birth control, but the pain seemed to be more and more often. After a year of tests and birth control, he was fed up. Oh, my dear. He was fed up after a year. How long is a year? What percentage of a year is it in the life of an 11-year-old who just became a 12-year-old? Already you started your period earlier than some, had to deal with it in a phenomenally pushy way right at the beginning, and then had to deal with an entire year of not even being at an age where you could understand exactly what effect a medication would have on your body, how you could differentiate the side effects from the original concern, that kind of thing. After a year of tests and birth control, he was fed up. He threw his hands up during one appointment and told my mom, "There is nothing wrong with her. You are helping reinforce that she thinks she's sick, but she's not. It's all in her head." When I previewed this story to read it quickly, didn't realize that it would have quite the effect it did on me. My story is unfortunately similar. I began my period at the age of 8. I do not remember a time when I didn't get my period. I have always had it. And moreover, I have it at a very rapid rate. I tend to have a cycle that in my earlier years was between 21 and 26 days. This whole 28-day thing, I never even got to there. So imagine having 1 week of pain, 1 week of feeling like myself, and then 1 week of PMS leading towards dysphoria and anxiety, and then doing it again every 3 weeks. And notice, it's all in her head, but there was a demonstrable concern. There was blood pouring out at a level that is not normal. How exactly is that considered something that's not a sickness? Why is that not a symptom? Because it comes from the assigned female at birth hole? Is that what makes something all in your head? It seems like things all in your head also come out from the hysterical hole, don't they? There is nothing wrong with her. You are helping reinforce that she thinks she's sick, but she's not. It's all in her head. She needs to be checked into a mental facility now. Holy shit. What? A 12-year-old with pain and bleeding? Imagine if you had pain and bleeding from any other part of the body. If you were assigned male at birth and you had any part of you that bled and had massive cramping and pain. It's said that in the medical community that GPs and doctors are trained about 10 years back, and sometimes when they're old-fashioned, work about 20 years back. I think this information is about 100 years back. This is the Victorian age. This is jumping to something because a doctor can't say, I don't know what it is. Has this doctor even sent you to a specialist? Has anything been done besides trying and trialing a medication that has a huge effect on mood, on responses? And what symptom did they base needing to be checked into a mental facility at 12? Even if you were doing things that were absolutely off the cuff, let's say for YouTube, what possible reason is there that an 11 or 12-year-old needs to be hospitalized against their will? Unless you're not telling me in the story that you offed somebody or something, and I don't think that you would have left that part off the story. And what are the statistics on 12-year-olds harming others? I don't know what Teya did or didn't do specifically that being turned into the care of a mental facility was right for them. I assume, and is it the wrong word to say hope, that you were actually on edge and not doing well, and that no one considered that that was a symptom? What are the side effects of birth control? What are the side effects of the pill in 11-year-olds? What are the side effects that they're not checking for because they're not treating the original root cause? Neither are they now treating the symptoms of the side effect. Even if you were doing things that were absolutely off the cuff, and I'm not saying I think they were, I think they probably weren't at all, in fact. But even if she had been doing something that was dangerous to herself or others, what possible reason is there to believe that an 11 or 12-year-old is doing that on purpose, or they can't be helped through other ways? I believe in and practice very much from what's called collaborative proactive solutions, which is a method delineated in The Explosive Child and Raising Human Beings by Ross Greene. The first thing he starts with is the idea of changing your lenses. The idea that we as adults are stuck in our metaphors even more than children are. In fact, children do well when they can. Adults are the ones that don't do as well. They're the ones that have layers of crap, metaphor, implied. They're the ones that have years and years and years of training in not saying the truth and in not saying that they don't know what's going on. Today is a crappy day for recording. I feel like I can't get 3 words out without falling apart. And you know what? I'm going to put that right into this. It is hard to read these stories, but I welcome it. I welcome the difficulty because the honor is mine to share the stories of those who are surviving and fighting. And notice I said before, I'm not fighting my body. I don't want you to fight your body. I do want you to fight for the rights of others, for the rights of yourselves. I do want you to fight for the community. I do want you to fight each day to be who you are and the information you have, and not to be treated like crap. This weekend I watched as my second child fought to be an athlete. They didn't fight their body. They tried to work with their body. They tried to get on the ice to play hockey. My second kid coaches hockey, and they've been trying to get back on the ice after the beginning of the same things and same symptoms that I've been struggling with. I wonder if Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or things like it are genetic. I wonder if they occur in the child too. I wonder if the RCCX spectrum happens in families. And I wonder if those who are misdiagnosed often find out when their children are finally diagnosed. My child got on and off the ice, dealing with the tension headache that came from a new helmet, dealing with the lack of endurance that occurs in strong muscles that are in shape, but they haven't had that consistent use. In Ehlers-Danlos, you have to warm up like it's the middle of winter and you're an old engine. You have to warm up your body for 1, 2, 4 times longer than other people. And that warm up has to occur not over 1 hour or 1 day, but over weeks and weeks and weeks as you transition back into exercise. We have to think of that as climbing a slow, low mountain of getting ourselves back into exercise. And if you overshoot, you'll just hurt yourself. Everybody's had the experience of trying to lift something or trying to get back into shape and do some sit-ups, and they overdo it the first day. Most people, they can warm up for a couple of weeks and be back at it, or even just a couple of days. Those of us with autoimmune or genetic disorders have to re-warm up over months, and sometimes it never happens. And the discouragement that comes from walking off of a track, walking off of the hockey rink, not being able to get one thing, having everything in order, having everything ready to go, and one part of your body won't work. One part of your gear isn't set up for your chronic illness. This is what I call triple work. Those of us with invisible disabilities have to do 3 times the work of other people. We have to do the activity. We have to do the making sure our body can do the activity and all the special things that are included to make it work. And we have to do the making sure people don't notice, or talking to them and saying we need accommodation, or dealing with the extra time on and off and getting back into it, or being late. The amount of work we do that people call us lazy or crazy is amazing when they don't notice that we can actually handle 3 times the work. I interviewed for a job several years ago when I was getting back into the workforce, and it was for operations and writing, things that are completely in my bailiwick and within my degrees. There was a moment when we were taking a break between questions, and I opened up my laptop to look at some information again. And one of the people who was interviewing me, an assigned male, said, "Look, there's your screensaver. You have kids." And then he kind of gulped and realized, oh, he shouldn't ask that at an interview. I really do believe that he was saying it because, yes, I just had a baby, and isn't that neat? And he was honestly having a personal conversation that was offside of the interview we were having. We had taken a small break, and it was just supposed to be an enjoyable conversation. However, the other participant in the interview, a young female, and her response immediately was, if you have that many children, how will you get to work every day? The guy at that point went really red and realized that he had stepped in it. Because in Canada, in all of Canada, human rights are protected for your gender presentation, for your orientation, for your age, for your personal family. None of these things are supposed to be part of the qualifications or the reasons you don't get a job. They are protected under a federal Human Rights Act. I have spent my life masking at things like interviews and saying things right and saying what I'm supposed to say and playing the game. But at this interview, I was fed up. And I actually stood up and I said, that's not a question you can ask me. And I'm no longer interested in continuing this interview. I said thank you, and I stepped out the meeting room door. By the time I got to the vestibule, to his credit, I believe that the male in the interview, actually, he must have messaged the boss or whoever, and the VP met me at the door before I got there. He actually did ask, what do you need in order to continue the interview? I'm really sorry. All of that. I'm pretty sure that that was just to make sure that I wasn't going to cause shit, or I wasn't going to sue anybody, or I wasn't going to bring a human rights case or complain to the news. Good try, but not quite enough. Whatever the reason was that he came and told me, I realized at that time that misogyny was so inbuilt in the system that even at a young and cool and hip company that thought it was neat to have dogs in the office and to have food available for employees, no one had actually connected with whether or not females should be treated as if they were equal participants. Those with children should be treated as if they're equal participants. Returning to my politics about DEI, I will once again say that inclusion and all the rest of it isn't about giving people what they don't deserve. It is about giving those who have spent a lifetime without what they deserve a chance for a level playing field. It is not ever going to take away the job. It's about the fact that they have been taking away the job from the right person for many decades. I'm old enough to have been excluded from interviews just because my resume had a female-leaning name. I got the same interviews when I switched to using an initial only on my resume. The VP at the door asked me what I would need to continue the interview, and I said that I would need to see both the report and the new policy and training about how they were going to create a culture for their employees to understand the language of misogyny and patriarchy within their workplace. I was especially saddened to notice that the person who reinforced the misogyny was herself female appearing. It's almost like we are living in the time of the mean girl, of passive aggressiveness and women fighting for the scraps they're given. Instead of making more pie, we are fighting over the slices of pie available to us. And I believe that it is part of patriarchy's job to make sure that those who are lower fight for the pieces they're given, because if they spend time fighting each other, they won't look up and fight who's really in charge. Oh, and by the way, I include males in that because patriarchy is not about feminism. It is not about females against males. It's about a specific set of powerful males who first stole power from others by simply taking as much and anything they wanted, and then kept that power through generations. And what are you going to do if you're a female in that system? You are going to become part of it. If you are the big boss's daughter, then you either fall in line, enjoy the money and time you're given, and you yourself become part of the system regardless of your gender. What do the spare men do? In every system of patriarchy, whether it's a job or a cult, we have to get rid of the extra men, because the men in charge, the patriarchs in charge, have to take more than their share, which means there are spare men left in every system. Patriarchy hurts men just as much as it hurts women. It hurts all the other genders. It's not really about gender at all. That's just to make sure we fight amongst ourselves. That's to keep the infighting happen, the in-civil war, but we don't notice who the true enemy is. I've never figured out exactly why doctors protect the system. Why are they not allowed to say, I don't know? What occurs when they do that? What system are they upholding that they themselves have become inured to, or that they have become used to, and the power and the systems have created metaphors in their head that make sure they stay in their system? Why were they unable to change, and why do they change so slowly? What part of the system do they hold up without even realizing they are a cog in a failing system? Do they feel like they have to have something to do? So sending a child to a mental hospital will be helpful? There is a saying, never put up to malfeasance what you can attribute to incompetence. Basically, you don't have to think it's evil before you think it's just stupid. If we keep people running around in the system, as Douglas Adams says, the power of the somebody else's problem field, if we just distribute the problem between lots and lots of people, that's enough to confuse the system. That's enough to reinforce the system because it's somebody else's problem. Every person just says, hey, it's not me, it's the computer. Hey, it's not me, I'm just doing my job. Hey, it's not me, all I do is take you to the hospital. Distributing the system amongst individuals who don't look at the overall operations, the overall system that's occurring, makes it very easy for all of the negative things in the system to just be passed from one to the other because it's nobody else's problem. Teya continues, she needs to be checked into a mental facility now, Teya's doctor says. A mental hospital got a hold of us, and my mum fought for me, telling them they needed to assess me before they could take me away. Wow, I would love to know what year this is. A lot of people talk about the good old days. Pretty sure we, the Gen X and the elder millennials, lived in the bad old days. I think we were raised by a generation of PTSD and broken families and don't talk about it. And we became the people who transmitted another generation of trauma to our kids. Where the hell are the checks and balances on this system? First, a GP is allowed to diagnose you. A mental hospital is allowed to contact you without assessing you. Where do these pieces and bits get left? Why do things just happen without any kind of due diligence or standard operating procedure even? Teya says, a counselor from that mental facility came down and we talked for 3 hours alone. When we exited the room, she looked at my mom and said, you go back to your doctor and tell him to do his job. There is something very wrong with this girl, and it's not in her head. And even if it was in her head, my mental health issues are all in my head precisely the same way my prescription is all in my head. And if anybody who knows me, they know I have near blindness without contact lenses. So if my mental health is all in my head, so is me getting behind the wheel of a car with no glasses on. A counselor from that mental facility came down and we talked for 3 hours alone. Believe the child. Children do well when they can. Behavior in a child is an unsolved problem. Listen to the child. Listen to the patient. Listen. Just like the idea that disciplining a child requires a lot of discipline on your part as a parent, listening to a patient requires infinite patience on your own. Listening to the entire story and finding out what's going on. Was this child listened to at any point? And thank you to whoever this is who finally listened. I know what it's like to be between the rock and the hard place. And I know how easy it is to become the rock or the hard place. Standing with softness between the system is one of the hardest things that we as practitioners, as patients, as humans will ever do. Staying kind, staying soft, staying willing to listen. And that's why these metaphors are so important to hold, not just in your head, but in your heart. Children do well when they can. Behavior is an unsolved problem. If I can't solve the puzzle, then I haven't asked enough questions. People with invisible chronic diseases do not inflate how bad they are. They underestimate how bad it is. My entire life was masking and hiding that third work, telling people I was fine, figuring out a way to calm their discomfort with my symptoms, trying to figure out how to do it anyways, even through the pain. I'm pretty sure that I could do something in pain that most people would be hospitalized for. When I birthed that second child, my pelvis dislocated. And I don't even mean the front of my pelvis. I mean the back of my pelvis. No, not my hip bone. The actual pelvis bone at the back of my hip dislocated. I believe that the pain I was in was analogous to what it would be like in a civil war to have your legs sawn off. I didn't ask for pain control. When they offered it, the only thing I asked was, will it help get the baby out? I had no concern for the amount of pain that I would live through after 3 days of being in labor. I still didn't care as long as it would do. Teya finishes by saying, my mom went to that doctor and told him what the facility said and that we were done with him. And we never went back to him. Go, Mom! Teya, your mom also did the most important thing. She believed you. Being believed by a parent is the number one criteria for whether or not children do well with chronic mental health issues, chronic physical issues, whether or not it becomes anxiety, fear, trauma, and pain. The most important thing you can do as a parent is listen, and when you can, believe the child. Even if you don't believe the child, believe that they are telling their truth and simply accepting that they are saying it. We have a culture that doesn't have any parenting words. That's a video that's coming soon. How to talk so kids will listen. I think I'm going to read the cartoons like the Saturday morning. Do you remember that when we were old, a long time ago in the bad old days? Someone used to read the cartoon page of the newspaper on the radio so that you as a kid, if you were too young or if you just wanted to hear them read. I think it's time for a story time, don't you? Good job, Mom. I'm proud of you. Teya says this is one of many misdiagnoses I got before we had to travel to Mexico from Canada to finally hear you have endometriosis. Of course you do. The symptoms in the differential diagnosis, that's the list of things that you should check first. You have a snotty nose. You check if it's a cold. Then you check if it's an allergy. Then you check. No, this gets us to Occam's razor. I had hoped to talk about Occam's razor soon. Many people have heard about Occam's razor finally on the internet, and it's a good thing to know about. And no, it's not razor like shaving. Razor in this context means a way to decide something, a process, a way to cut things into pieces, as it were. And a differential diagnosis means you compare the differences between the most common diagnoses. Most people know that Occam's razor starts by saying simplest explanation is probably the correct one. But everybody misquotes Occam's razor. Just like the phrase, the proof is in the pudding. No, it's not. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. Everyone leaves off a part of the saying. Occam's razor, in its more complete form, says the simplest explanation is probably the correct one as long as it fits all the facts. And that is what is missing. Occam's razor does not say the simplest explanation is that you are likely dealing with a mental concern that requires hospitalization at the age of 12. Occam's razor says, look for something that fits all the facts. And that means that if a complex diagnosis is required to fit all of the facts, then that is the simplest explanation. Simple doesn't mean the one I pull out of my ass. Simple doesn't mean the one that makes it easiest for me to get you out of my hair. The simplest one isn't the one that has medication available for it. The simplest one is the one that fits all the facts, and that may require a very complex diagnosis, because if it doesn't fit all the facts, then you are going to make a complicated solution that includes misdiagnosis, gaslighting, mistreatment, side effects of drugs being confused with the actual symptoms of the disorders. It's interesting to me that they had to travel to Mexico from Canada. Many people in North America and in the world might consider Mexico to be the less developed country or something like that. In fact, I've found all of the countries in North America to be an absolute mess when it comes to healthcare, with only small pockets of people who are doing things right. Specialists, people who are standing in between, people working at the edge of their scope, people who have different experiences and have put the puzzle together. We are unfortunately still looking for Sherlock amongst many Keystone Cops. Teya has given me permission to share her entire name, and I think that makes sense because she has also added a note at the end of her story that says she would love to be on a podcast or in my newest book about the stories of survivors of gaslighting, as Teya is an author herself and has self-published a book raising awareness for endometriosis and shedding light. Very funny. I see what you did there. There's a great pun. Shedding light, if you know, you know, on the healthcare system that is seriously in need of a revamp. I'm a big advocate for this stuff, as am I, as someone with massive dysmenorrhea and PMDD, dysphoria before my period. Unfortunately, most of us who have dealt with big piles of crap often become big advocates for those piles of crap. Same crap, different pile. She says, in case you don't believe me, which I understand, why wouldn't I believe you? Or is that a joke? Is that a joke? Oh, do I not believe you? Would I gaslight you about writing a book, Teya? Let me hope that was done on purpose. I'm going to go with it. Are you assuming that I would gaslight you about whether or not you wrote a book? Very funny. I like it. I like it. In case you don't believe me, which I understand, especially on a podcast about gaslighting, her book is no longer Hysteria, My Chronic Battle with Endometriosis by Taya Friesen. I'll put a link to that in the description. I believe that you wrote a book. I think many of us who talk too much end up writing a book so that our words finally get out there and someone, hopefully, doesn't have the same experience we had starting as a very young child. Those of us who see that gaslighting has occurred to us have to speak up because we are so done with it. We are so done with being not believed. And the most important thing after the change to our lives is that we want things out there to change for one child who is finally believed. Some of us don't have the moms we had. Some of us don't have the families we had. Some of us are never caught by that counselor. Some of us are put in the loop for much longer. Some of us don't have the chance to travel to another country. Some of us are never seen by the right specialist. Some of us go our entire lives and no one tells us that we were right all along. I have a grade 4 teacher that I would like to go back and I would literally sit in her old age home or wherever she be right now and tell her, you were wrong. You hurt a child. As a teacher, you did the one thing that you're not supposed to do, and you hurt a child because you said they were lying when they were not. You know what happens when you tell a kid that they're lying when they're not? They give up and have no reason not to start lying or behaving or trying to be perfect or not trying to be perfect anymore. More behavior comes from not believing a child than ever came from believing them. In the history of being told to calm down, no one has ever calmed down. I'm sharing Teya's full name, partly so we can find her as an author, and partly because I'm interested by the fact that her last name is Friesen, spelled in a way that most people may not know how to pronounce. As someone with a Canadian Mennonite or Low German last names on my mother's side, I definitely grew up in the area that had a lot of Friesens. It makes me wonder again, as the genetics are coming in, one of the things I think that is underexplored in the genetics of these chronic illnesses are the small self-contained populations of immigrants that came to Canada and North America in general. But there were lots of population of Ukrainian, Hungarian, Polish, Mennonite, and Irish. Lots of populations that, when they came to Canada, stayed in a relatively smaller genetic population. I wonder if the expression of certain genes has built up in certain populations, and that one day, hopefully in my lifetime, we'll actually see new research into some of these things. Maybe we'll finally hear your genetics are rare. When my kids were toddlers, I taught them over and over, just because something is rare doesn't make it wrong. And that stands for your gender, for your orientation, for your brain wiring, for the genetics that you were born with. Occam's razor pushes me every day to find the simplest explanation that fits every single fact. And the facts are starting to tell me that all of this is really happening to people. And that right now, even today, we're not getting care. We're being underserviced. There is no system in Canada for taking care of chronic illness. It all relies on you to take care of yourselves. And unfortunately, it is a daily occurrence for people to have to head to the ER when an acute issue comes up. And the very first thing that person thinks about is, how will I not be treated as if I'm lying? I was treated as if I was lying at the emergency room just last month. I have been treated as if I was making it up, lying, trying to get attention. It's not actually the most likely occurrence that I would be a hypochondriac. All of the facts don't fit. The simplest explanation is that I am telling the truth, and I really do have over 900 symptoms that can be separately assessed and are not just all in my head, just like my contact prescription. Being told I was lying was particularly difficult as someone who experiences what I believe is hyperthymesia. Some people have heard of HSAM, which is called a highly superior autobiographical memory. I hate the term highly superior. It comes from the statistics, meaning like 99th percentile. The problem is that it means that the current diagnosis for HSAM, for highly superior autobiographical memory, discludes most people who might have a slightly different version of it. It has to be a perfect memory. The current test criteria are very number heavy, very date heavy, and are very much based in American history. None of which are catching the people who have a 90% or 95%, the so-called superior or high above average autobiographical memory. I choose to use the old term, the lovely Latin term hyperthymesia, which literally means hypertime memory. And often people don't understand that a highly superior autobiographical memory, an eidetic memory, doesn't have to mean that you remember everything you've ever read or everything you've ever looked at. Photographic or perfect memories, spectrum of how people remember their own autobiographical memories is a spectrum, I believe, like anything else. There are people who have no video memory, and there are people who have perfect video memory of their lives. But what about all the people in the middle? What about the 95th percentile? Or as I like to call it, the 89 percenter who get stuck with a nearly perfect autobiographical memory because of a learning disability, the inability to do calculations, the inability to remember numbers, or someone who doesn't remember dates, or who knows comparatively nothing about American history compared to, well, any other country's history, really. But it's hard to be told as a child who remembers a good 95% of anything that has ever happened to me over the age of 5, and remembers a good portion of what occurred to me from the age of 2 until 5. My memories of a week ago and a month ago and a year ago and a decade ago and 3 decades ago, I think is the same as what most people have as a visual memory of what they had for breakfast. Memories never fade, and so to be told I'm lying and to be able to remember the 4th grade almost perfectly, to remember the incident of being told I was lying when I knew for sure and can remember now that I was indeed not lying. Gaslighting can be potentially extra painful for those who are neurodiverse, those of us who have intense memories, those of us who are literal due to autism or just being ethical. Those people can actually be traumatized even more. Us with incredible memories that are often connected to the autoimmune disorders, I believe those genetics are intertwined. I think that it's especially damaging to a child who has a great memory and a great sense of ethics to be told a made-up story by an adult. Who do you believe? Who's going to help you? Who are the people who are safe? And this is why we begin to hide. We begin to mask. And unfortunately, in the worst case scenario, no one is safe. People who are supposed to be the safest are the people who are the most dangerous in our lives. People say, well, we need to educate people. We need to train people. Of course, they don't know this stuff. It's new. I'm not asking for them to know all of the facts. I am asking them to change their lenses, to change the underlying metaphor that they carry around, that people probably have mental disorders rather than a physical disorder that I don't know about or can't figure out. What is wrong with saying, I don't know? Why exactly is the phrase, I don't know, so dangerous in our society? And the answer is that we've made it dangerous. We have trained in parenting, in work, in patriarchy, in power, that saying, I don't know, is one of the most dangerous things you can do. And this underlying metaphor has led us, I believe, directly to the horrible people in power right now who are so unwilling to say, I don't know, that they will literally lie about what they said. They will literally lie about their skills. They will literally make up how good they are as a gamer, or they'll make up what they said on camera only 10 minutes ago. Gaslighting isn't on the surface of our culture. It isn't icing or sprinkles on top. It is baked into the pie that we are all fighting over. And the only thing to do is to pull it apart and see that we need to make more pie. We need to teach ourselves that it's okay to say, I don't know. We need to find the people who are safe to talk to. We need to exclude and fight back to the voices that say we're wrong and that we don't know what we're talking about. I would say that you should have known that I was continuing this series, that I already told you, but that would be gaslighting. I want to thank Teya for sharing her story, for sharing the good parts and the safe people that she found, as well as the difficult and the incorrect people. I also am glad to hear what finally got her to the right information. I'm so impressed by her mom for being the different person who believed her child. And I'm in the same situation. Thanks, Mom. Here's a shout out for believing me. I was always believed. My mother was a cycle breaker. My mother is still a cycle breaker. And the metaphor she had of simply believing her children, and if she didn't believe, at least listening to them without initial judgment. Unfortunately, parenting right now is reality shows of parenting with a million children or a lot of passengers. And it's time we showed normal, healthy, realistic parenting. Gentle parenting, intentional parenting, messy parenting, good parenting. The first step is the simplest one. Listen. Listen to your child and repeat back to them what they said. It sounds like you're saying this. I'm hearing you say that. Rather than assuming that they're lazy or lying, perhaps you don't know the triple work or the triple truth that people with invisible disabilities have to carry around every day. We're not doing less than you. We're doing more. Teya, I'll be contacting you about a podcast. I would love to support and get the word out there about your book, No Longer Hysteria, My Chronic Battle with Endometriosis by Teya Friesen. I hope that as a fellow Canadian, you don't spend too much time and energy self-publishing, and I'd love to talk to you about that publishing as well. I'll also give a shout out to my own small publishing house, Elm Park Books Press. Started by my father, continued by my mother. I am happy to share that I am a micro-publisher and that sometimes if you're not being listened to, you just have to do it yourself. And to everybody who's submitted already, there's still plenty of me talking too much, the members of my community that have broken through the shame and the trauma that has been dumped on them by these experiences and who have risen to telling the truth, as they always were, and sharing their stories. I don't read these stories for the shock value or even for the algorithm. I share these stories because it's our turn to speak. The internet age gives us a unique opportunity to finally speak up. Many of my fellow community members lived in an era before there was a chance to share things electronically. People who had rare diagnoses were alone. If there's only a few of us in Canada, or if somebody in our family didn't have the concern, then how were we supposed to know? We couldn't read these things. We couldn't search these things. This information is brand new. I think some of us are on the leading and even bleeding edge of information and case studies. Many of us feel like we need to get our stories out there, partly for those who won't have to go through the same thing as we did, but partly because we're worried about the actual case studies and statistics of our chronic concerns being hugely underestimated. When it comes to the constellation of disorders that are somewhere along the Ehlers-Danlos spectrum and the trifecta of mast cell activation and postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, I deal with several things, some of which are diagnosed, some of which I only presume, but I do so with extremely good evidence. We shouldn't be diagnosing ourselves on the internet by doing a quick 5-minute search. But doctors need to understand that some of us are spending 20 years on PubMed and end up with degrees and PhDs in order to assess our own illnesses. That we are writing as world experts or local experts about our own disorders. That we are going out there and doing research for years. Some of us are very smart. And since we are not in a position to do a medical case study, we're writing our story so that it can be heard and so that it can be saved. And that the statistics of doctors who said, oh, you can't have that. That disorder is so rare that I was told in medical school that I wouldn't see it in my lifetime. If you're not looking for something, of course you won't see it in your lifetime. That's like telling somebody, don't see people being bullied for that. Are you the person they're bullying? Or do they wait to get the person they're bullying alone and you wouldn't be the person who's there? Are you the one that was privileged enough not to be bullied for that? Systemic reasons why bullies grew up to be managers is also why they grew up to be politicians. And many of us who are struggling with chronic disorders don't have the time and energy to head to the rallies to start parades, to fight in the streets. We take up the standard bearing we have available to us, and that's to speak in the written and the spoken word. Our stories will persist, and perhaps the statistics will change. If you'd like to submit one of your stories of gaslighting and negative medical experience, I'm especially looking for stories when you have begun to doubt your own diagnosis, your own experience, and even your own symptoms because of the pushback from the medical community. And if you have a good story to share, a time when you broke through and the truth was listened to, if you have something uplifting, share that as well. The link to my Google form to share your experiences is in the description. I'm looking forward to reading Teya's book. I'm going to go find it, link it down below in the description box. I'll be buying a copy as soon as I get off this recording. I appreciate everyone's words for this new series. I appreciate all of you more than anything. Thank you for listening to my words. My name is Maria, and I'm Little Misdiagnosed. Wow, that was messy. Wow, the outtakes on that are going to be nuts. I don't even know if I got anything good. Man, that took forever. I literally stuttered every 3 words. Because the brain fog is real today, people. You can be super intelligent and still not be able to say anything every 3 words. I guess it's my mom getting a shout out this time. I wonder, am I going to work through my family members saying thanks to all of them? It's actually really cool. My mom is 80 years old this year. Happy birthday, Mom, which is actually more of an achievement than even usual. Because my mother was not supposed to be alive. She keeps forgetting to die from her chronic condition. And at this point, I'm pretty sure she's just doing it for the credibility. She's just doing it to get presents. And my mother is nothing like that at all. My mother has never asked for anything from her children and still continues to parent me. My mommy, even though I am a Gen X and she is a boomer. Wait, what generation does she fall into actually? Is she the silent generation? Are you old enough to be that, Mom? I don't know. You're really old, and I'm pretty old too, and isn't that wonderful? That's only an insult if old is a bad thing. This is what your under eyes actually look like when you haven't slept and you're old and you have multiple chronic illnesses. But you know what? Let's normalize skin texture, shall we? Let's normalize double chins. Let's normalize still being alive because you've spent months in bed. Let's normalize the fact that people walk out the room. It was weird. Did I tell you? Did I tell you that I didn't eat breakfast today and I'm still fat? It didn't go away. Now I'm just making outtakes for no reason. Maybe I'll just make a whole thing of outtakes. All the stuff. Look at those red eyes. Look at them. Look at them. That is the real. You can make yourself pretty on YouTube. But those red eyes tell the real story. Do I have any other stories to tell while I'm still here? Take care of yourselves with much love and gentle hugs. With much love and gentle hugs. I'm signing off. I'm doing whatever. What am I saying? I don't know. With much love and gentle hugs, seek your own truth and have the day you deserve.